Hi, I'm Ross Rosenberg. Welcome to my latest YouTube video. Today I'm going to talk about codependency, or what I call self-love deficit disorder, and adult children of alcoholics. But before I begin, let me explain the names so we know what we're talking about. Adult children of alcoholics, which used to be called ACOAs, they're called ACAs now, is a designation for a person who was raised in a family in which there was an alcoholic parent. Because of the alcoholic's psychological problems, vis-a-vis their addiction, their children were subjected to neglect, abandonment, and abuse, some very direct and some subtle. A person with self-love deficit disorder, or as some people know, codependency, explains the caretaker, the person who in relationships takes care of others before they take care of themselves. They only know one way to exist in relationships is to love and respect and care for others, hope that that will be reciprocated. Because of the human magnet syndrome, they habitually, reflexively choose narcissists. They never get the reciprocity and the mutuality that they so much desire. But because they're SLDs, or codependents, they stay in the relationship. So SLDs, as defined in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, simply are individuals who give all the love, respect, and caring away to others, want it to be reciprocal, it's not, and they stay in a relationship. For further information about SLDD or codependency, please read my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome. So we are talking about two types of individuals, and the differences are the ACA was subjected to a family, a father, a mother who is an alcoholic, and often, but not always, another parent who is a co-addict. A co-addict is different from an SLD or a codependent. An addict or an alcoholic has all sorts of psychological, personal, and social deficits, judgment problems, insight problems, problems with the law, problems with working, problems with relationships and families and emotional expression because of the drug that they're addicted to. They choose the drug over their loved ones because the nature of an addiction. It is a terrible disease, it's a terrible disorder, and it commandeers one's mental health, one's personality. It creates a desire to satiate the craving that will push a person, compel a person to do things that he or she would normally not do if they were not an alcoholic. So if you are a child raised by a parent who's an alcoholic, or for that matter, a drug addict, it means, more than likely, that you lived in a family environment with chaos, unpredictability, harm, abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, abandonment. It is impossible, nearly impossible, for a person who is in the throes of alcoholism to meet the needs of their children, or for that matter, anyone in their family. The addiction is so strong, so compelling, that the addict, the alcoholic, is going to choose the booze, the alcohol, before anything else. And the results are disastrous. There are so many scarred and psychologically impaired people because they were raised in a family with an alcoholic in such an environment, especially when very young, during the critical stages of development, which we call the attachment stages. Their emotional, verbal, and social skills were stunted. It is impossible for a child to be raised in a healthy, loving, predictable family when one parent is a chronic alcoholic, chemically dependent, and addicted. It is virtually impossible. It just doesn't happen. Therefore, someone who identifies themselves as an adult child of an alcoholic is a person who carries psychological, social, emotional impairment because of the harm that they experience because of their parents' alcoholism. And again, if it's a two-parent family, and the other parent's inability to protect or shield them from the harm. There are so many psychological outcomes for a person who is an adult child of an alcoholic. There are numerous possibilities of how someone's attachment trauma, their early childhood experiences as a child in such a dysfunctional home, impacts them later as an adult. There is no one type of ACA, and that goes against what many people think. There are angry ACAs, reactive ACAs, because when they were children, that abuse, that neglect, that harm resulted in an angry and resentful disposition. There are passive ACAs, those who learn to disassociate, to disconnect. They found that by not feeling or not thinking about the harm, or through active imagination, through all sorts of mental manipulation, emotional manipulation of their feelings, that they could survive the harm in their family. And in between the angry and reactive and the more disassociated ACA is the rest. And there are so many other potential outcomes for an ACA. So what I'm saying is, if you were raised in a family in which there was an alcoholic and another parent who was a co-addict, and I'll explain what that means in a second, that means you were harmed, that your childhood was not easy, that it was filled with either neglect, abandonment, or abuse. And there is no way you could have escaped the harm. I should add that there are different forms of alcoholics. And that's why understanding ACAs are challenging, because there's such a variety, such a range of possibilities. There are folks who are quiet, mellow, disconnected, abandoning, neglectful alcoholics. And the harm from that is just unfathomable. In fact, it's been my experience over my 32 years practicing psychotherapy, the harm from neglect and abandonment far exceeds the harm from abuse. I think of it that it's not what happened to you that determines the extent of the harm. It's the experience of it. And you can be yelled at and hit and physically abused and get some attention, or get moments when the person is loving you or laughing with you or playing with you. But if you have the alcoholic parent who is quiet, who isolates, who himself or herself disassociates, then you are experiencing more of deprivation, neglect, and abandonment. The partner of the ACA is a co-addict. That is an equally nebulous and vague description, just as an ACA is. A co-addict is the partner of the addict. It doesn't mean they're an SLD or codependent. It just means they are choosing to stay in a relationship with the addict for all sorts of reasons. More often than not, they cover for the addict. They take care of the addict. They try to solve the problems that perpetually are created by the addict or the alcoholic's disease or chemical dependency. The co-addict can be an SLD or a narcissist. So now we are going into the realm of my human magnet syndrome theory, where I talk about how SLDs or codependents are always attracted to the narcissist. Further discussion on that is found in my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, and of course in my other videos. So the ACA has a parent who's an alcoholic, chemically dependent, and a parent who is a co-addict. The probability is that the co-addict is a caretaker, which means that they are an SLD, but it's not always the case. Chemical dependency, alcoholism, does not discriminate. You can be an SLD, a codependent, and be an alcoholic. You can be a narcissist and be an alcoholic. You can have none of those designations and be an alcoholic. So if you are an adult child of an alcoholic and your, say, mother was the alcoholic and she had narcissistic personality disorder, you had doubly the abuse, the neglect, or the abandonment. Doubly. I talk about, in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, the harm that is perpetrated by narcissistic parents. And in the case where your parent, the narcissist, alcoholic, then it's likely that your other parent will be the SLD, the co-addict, the caretaker. So ACAs can have it really rough, and there are all different types of them. As many variations exist, There are also similarities that exist with all ACAs. All of them were brought up with unpredictability, chaos, often fear, a parent who was unable to nurture, take care of them, be interested in them because of the internal chaos of their alcoholism or the external manifestations of that. So that is what an ACA is. ACAs, like SLDs, have psychological problems, have attachment trauma, for which psychotherapy is extremely beneficial. There are also 12-step groups like Adult Children of Alcoholics, which is adultchildren.org. It's a wonderful, very helpful 12-step group that can help survivors of any age of an alcoholic parent. Now let's contrast the SLD codependent. There are two opposite personality types in any relationship that is caused by romantic chemistry. As I talk about in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, every romantic relationship, every relationship that was started through chemistry, through the pull of romantic interest and intense feelings of connection, familiarity, and attraction. These relationships are brought together by how the opposite personality types fit together. And in extreme dysfunctional opposites, we have caretakers who give all the love, respect, and caring to people who want it reciprocated. It can't be. They sometimes try to control it. They can't, and they choose to stay in a relationship. The SLDs are the codependents. They are always attracted to, reflexively and predictably, to someone that fits them, matches them like a puzzle piece, the narcissist, who needs all the love, respect, and caring, has no ambitions or capabilities of reciprocating, and knows that the person whom they are connected to, attracted to, in relationship with, will not push them, will not set boundaries for them to absolutely give away what they need so much. The SLD, the codependent, and the narcissist comprise these dysfunctional relationships. As I describe in my book, personality type, mental health, introversion versus extroversion, addictions, mental illness, habits, they are all independent of SLDD. SLDD is a very specific problem that I gave you a very concise explanation for. Therefore, an SLD is a person who is chronically attracted to narcissists, who lives in misery because they cannot stop themselves from this attraction process. They cannot extricate themselves from the relationship for fear of pathological loneliness, which is the #1 withdrawal symptom of SLDD or codependency addiction. They carry intense core shame. The loneliness infects their life, and the addiction that pulls them into a relationship because of the fear of being alone or lonely and the shame they carry keeps them mired in the relationship with a narcissist or sets them up for the next relationship with a narcissist. So an SLD is a very specific mental health problem. It is more specific than someone who is an adult child of an alcoholic. An ACA can be an SLD. An ACA can be a narcissist. An ACA can be neither. An ACA experienced attachment trauma because of their early childhood experiences in their family with the chaos created by the alcoholism. That requires 12-step involvement and other forms of help and services. It's not the same as codependency or SLDD. Just as the term empath is not the same as self-love deficit disorder or codependency. An empath, by definition, is someone who very strongly feels what other people feel. They absorb and connect to people's feelings. They can almost predict what a person will do or say because of their abilities to be empathetically connected to them. That is independent of mental health. You can be an empath and be really healthy and a very good therapist or a nurse for that matter. Or you can be an empath and you can be an SLD, a codependent, and be dysfunctionally attracted to narcissists and and we know the rest of that. Or you can be apathetic, believe it or not, and be a narcissist. What it means is you are able to read people, imagine how they feel, and if you're a narcissist, exploit them. I do have an article about that. Just Google Ross Rosenberg and empaths and you'll see my article. So, in conclusion, both the SLD, the codependent, and the adult child of an alcoholic were raised in chaotic families. Both carry the wounds, the war wounds, of a very troubled and very difficult childhood. But what manifests later in their adulthood and its impact on them psychologically and emotionally and relationally is far different. I hope this video helped you understand the similarities and differences of adult children of alcoholics and SLDs. If you are interested in my material, whether it's the human magnet syndrome, the codependency cure, or my other mental health self-development information, please visit my Self-Love Recovery Institute website, selfloverecovery.com. Take care and be well.